WLTX breaking news now.
That's right, everyone. We do have some breaking news. Governor McMaster is right now at the State House about to hold a press conference to discuss his vetoes of the state budget. Looks like he's getting underway right now.
We had a good year last year. We're going to have a better year this year. That is, 2027 is going to be great. Things are coming our way. We've learned, as far as advanced manufacturing, particularly automobiles, we're writing the book on that every day. And we have inquiries all the time for the sophisticated things that we're teaching and training at our technical college system. That's really the key to what makes us, one thing that makes us so different from other places. If you look at those courses, look at the skills, look how quickly we can put it together. And we are the only state in the country that has a legitimate and big, powerful program. We call it Ready SC, where we will teach, train people, our people here, or others that are coming in, mostly ours here. That's why these manufacturers come here, is because of the people. You know, they call us a handshake state. Nobody else has that designation. But I think Wisconsin and maybe North Carolina have small programs like ours, but we will train the workers. If they have the aptitude, we'll train them for these manufacturers and these businesses, new ones coming in or those expanding here at no cost. And nobody else does that on a routine basis and as well as we do, and that makes an enormous difference. But that's in manufacturing, all of those kinds of high-skill jobs, and that is a reflection of the strength of our technical college system. I'm going to focus, I'll talk about a few of these things and answer your questions. The budget is $43.9 billion, that's state, federal, and all revenues from all sources. It's about a third from Medicaid program, comes from the federal government, another third from fines, fees, tuition, gas taxes, and we call them other funds, things that are tuitions, things that are designated to go to certain places. And then from tax, sales tax and income tax, that's where our share that I refer to as $14 billion, that's where that comes from. So that's a big budget, and it's always growing, and fortunately we've had surplus after surplus, which means that we're doing things right. And of course our budget, just for those who have not thought of this, the national debt right now I think is going on $40 trillion. That's something like $140,000 for every American that we owe to banks and people through bonds, all those kind of things, where we borrow the money. We have a balanced budget, required by the Constitution. So we don't have that problem, and in fact, we actually have surpluses. This year, the General Assembly adopted about 92% of the proposals that I made for this budget. That is a remarkable number. We were trying to think when, if ever, it has reached that level, and we're really not sure, but we know that that's a lot. But that tells something about the way that we're working in this government. And it's those words I use all the time. Y'all have heard: communicate, collaborate, and cooperate. Don't operate by surprise. Get ideas, talk to people, listen to ideas, legislators, agencies, and you generally will come up with a good idea. And I think that's reflected with so much of what my office proposed in this budget is actually in this budget, 92%. One thing that shows the good strength is the fact that 83% of our prime age workforce, and those are individuals between the ages of 25 and 54, are either employed or actively seeking employment, and that's the highest such number in the Southeast. And the Southeast is growing. Other states, other parts of the country are hurting. We've cut taxes. That's one reason we're growing. People can spend their money, and we try to be as efficient and careful with the rest. In 2017, the top marginal tax rate was 7%. This year, with this budget, we're going down to 5.21%. That is great news for everybody. We're also giving money back, or not taking money from homeowners. We're increasing the homestead exemption from $50,000 on your value of your home to $75,000. That's going to help. We are real proud of what we've done with teachers and in education. 8 years ago, the minimum starting salary of a teacher in our state was $30,113. Now, with this budget, it's going up $50,500. I think the average salary, or maybe it's a starting salary average, anyway, it's up around $64,000, $65,000. That's good news, because that's even counting inflation. That's gone up a whole lot. So that is real good news. It shows that we're putting our money where it's important. Another thing you've heard over and over every year is about the school resource officers. You can remember there were times we've had incidents where children were hurt in schools, were assaulted in schools. Well, in 2017, as a starting point, we had 406 full-time school resource officers. These are trained, armed, certified, uniformed officers in school all day. They don't come and go. They're there all the time. They don't need to be called to the school because they're already at the school. And troublemakers know they're at the school. In school year 25-26, there were 1,181, up from 406. We have a total of 1,284 public schools, so we're just under 100 short. And that's not because we haven't funded it. The money is there. They just can't find the right officers to come in and work in those schools. We also invested in early childhood education. One way, of course, is a full-day, 4-year-old kindergarten. We're now expanding that. The budget adopts my recommendation to expand the program, and private providers, they have to be 3 times the poverty rate. But why private provider? It's because the public schools don't have room, so we will have to build some more. But in the meantime, we're opening it up more to private providers, and that's going to help a lot of children. Also, the Parental Choice Education Scholarship Trust Fund, it has money in it. Also, we've frozen college tuition for now is the 7th year. And we've also have something new with the Meeting Street Scholarship Fund, which is private individuals putting money into that, millions of dollars. And the state is putting in $18.7 million in lottery revenues, and this is for academically prepared, that is, good students who are below that poverty or Pell Grant eligible, which takes them down into the poverty level. Conservation is a big thing. We understand it's important, not only for recreation, not only for good health, not only because of the satisfaction that it provides to tourists and others, but it is important that we preserve and conserve the historic, pristine, significant properties around the state, and we're putting money into that in this budget. We recently protected 62,000 acres in the PD, which is, we think, the largest such easement in history. That brings us up to, I think we'll soon be over 400,000 acres just in the last few years, with more coming, and also putting money for mitigation projects. One thing about roads, when I came in 2017, just a point of comparison, we had about $2.7 billion out for roads being worked, being built, being widened. right now we have about $7 billion out in active projects underway all around the state. That's an improvement. I asked for about $1.1 billion in this budget, and the legislature did provide $377 billion out of like more, but we'll take it and we'll squeeze it and we'll keep going and go faster as fast as we can. Law enforcement, we've raised salaries for state officers. We've fixed the officers' retirement system so those who've retired can come back and earn up to $80,000 without reducing their retirement benefits. And why that's important is we have a lot of men and women that start off pretty young, and by the time they get to retirement age, they still have a lot of law enforcement left in them. So we want to keep them in as long as we can. As long as they're able to work and doing a good job and willing, we'll do it. Electric power is something that we are very serious about, and we need more. We need to be careful. My administration, our policy is for nuclear. We believe it's efficient, it's safe, and it outproduces all the others for the cost. So we need to grow our power, and as you know, we have an active project going on right now with memos of understanding to see what we can do with the 2 reactors that were not finished up at VC Summer. We are leading with all that we've done with our technology and innovation hubs. We're one of 12 in the country that won that from the U.S. Department of Commerce. With what we've done in past years has set us in a position now to lead this nuclear renaissance in the United States. And we intend to do it because that's where you get the most power for the input. It's clean and it's safe. One thing about, I want to mention about the earmarks, and that's where one of my vetoes is. And that is the legislature. As you know, the Scout project was over budget by about $150 million. It wasn't because of anything Scout did, but the state had contracts and obligations with all the contractors to build that place. And we have about $150 million in overruns. Well, that needs to be paid. That's work that has been done, or work that is under contract to be done, and we must pay those to whom the state has obligated itself. We must see that money gets there. So the legislature has imposed a condition on that, and that is before that money is paid, that the Legislative Audit Council needs to inquire about why we have a shortfall, and then the legislature will vote on whether to pay those bills. Well, that's not the way to do business. If you enter into a contract and somebody has done the work, or they brought the equipment to do the work, or they've already started, they're part of the way through, if we have a contract, an obligation to them, then we got to keep it. We can't say, well, something happened, we had a cost overrun, so we're not going to pay you. It had nothing to do with the cost overrun. Scout had nothing to do with the cost overrun. So that I'm going to veto that proviso. I think it's bad business policy. It hurts our reputation as a handshake state where people can depend on us, and the money needs to be paid. We can still have the inquiry. We can still go back, although the Commerce Secretary and others, everyone has discussed and testified about what happened. You know, there was a 5-month delay in the project due to an environmental question, and that's costly. But we owe the money, and we contracted to do it, and we have to pay it. So that's why I'm vetoing that. And there's another one about the town of Pacolet, where town of Pacolet received funds for a project in Pacolet. I don't remember what it was right offhand, but the money was not never made it to where it was supposed to go. I think it was stolen or used in the wrong fashion. And there's a proviso that would and the grant to the town provided if the project didn't get completed, then the money would have to be refunded. Well, the project wasn't completed because the money went to unauthorized sources or was stolen. And so the project did not get done and will not get done. And this proviso would cancel that obligation, that contractual obligation to pay the money back to the state. Well, that's a bad precedent. That's a bad policy. I hate that they didn't get their project done, but the state cannot cancel a debt, cannot cancel an obligation like that. If we were to begin doing that, I imagine there'd be a lot of them all over from A to Z that over time would be seeking forgiveness and cancellation of debts. So those are the main vetoes I have. But I think, again, going back to the beginning, I think we're making real progress. We've had a cooperative attitude over the years. It's strong. Our state is viewed by others, people around the world, as a marvelous place to be, and that's one reason we have a lot of people, when they reach retirement age or have the resources, they want to come be in South Carolina, that often a lot of us take for granted. Well, they don't, and it's a beautiful place. It's unique, and I think with good leadership, with our great people, I think the future is very bright for our state. Does anyone have an easy question? Joe?
Governor, the lawmakers cannot agree on how much earmarks to put into the budget.
Beg your pardon?
Lawmakers cannot agree on earmarks in the budget.
Yeah.
They gave, both chambers gave you the information on their earmarks while the process was ongoing. How many of those earmarks were you planning to be anyways?
I don't know that we got to that point, but probably a lot of them. We did get some information. We started doing that, started asking for information, and it's worked pretty well. And there's some good ones in there. There's some very good ones in there. But earmarks are not, that's not the way. That is not the way to run a government. What I've suggested, and I think a lot of the legislators agree, that the best practice would be simply for the agencies perhaps to have hearings, for the towns and cities to make decisions and send in to the various agencies that would be involved in implementing that decision to what they would like done. And they can put a price tag on it, and eventually that information can be given to the legislature, and they can provide grants to those agencies to have public hearings and make decisions on which ones to grant and which ones not to. The whole thing would be out in the open. Everybody would know about it, and there would be no opportunity for anything to be hidden from discussion. That's the way it ought to be. The old days of earmarks, where a bunch of legislators and others would simply say, we want to send this money there and this money there, where the agency hadn't even asked for it, wasn't even planning on it, didn't even want it. And then someone would call up and say, by the way, of that X number of dollars, half of that goes to this project over here. Never been any public discussion, never been any opportunity for anybody to examine the merits or demerits of the program. We can't do it that way. That's these people's money that we're taking from them. And if it's going to go to any project, whatever that project is, whatever that thing is, some are probably don't have much merit. Others may have lots of merit. In any event, the decision ought to be made publicly because it's the citizens' money. A lot of them don't have any money to spare. Some do have some money to spare, but in any event, it ought to all be public, ought to be completely transparent.
This is your last budget that you're approving. What do you think are the biggest challenges budget-wise for the next
Well, one of them is going to be getting rid of these earmarks. That's something that has to be done because it's not good policy. But we're continuing to grow. We've got to have power, electric power. Now, our state is situated better than any other to lead the way on this, I call it, and it is called around the world, a nuclear renaissance, because we've set up over the years, we've set up with institutions, the Savannah River sites there, we're familiar that we have 7 nuclear reactors at 4 different plants, and that produces about 60% of our energy. I think maybe Pennsylvania produces more, a larger percentage than we do, and maybe some other state. But we are nuclear ready. We understand it, and we understand how powerful it is. But we have to keep that going. We also have to worry about the farmland. That's why we had easements for farmland, for historical purposes. That is, you put your farm in a conservation, you get an easement there, and it'll be maintained because our land, undeveloped land, is going too fast. Now we need to develop a lot more things. Our cities are going to grow, but right now I think there are about 1.2 million acres within city limits. That is, I call that the concrete and asphalt and buildings. And we have about 4.7 million, I think, that are farmland, and maybe about 11 million that are forests, and there may be some overlap there. We have maybe getting close to 3.3 million that have conservation easements of some kind on them. We need to do more of that because we have priceless and precious natural places here that are good for everyone's health. They're good for tourism. They're good for everything, and we need to protect that. That's going to be a challenge. I think that of all that acreage, national parks, state parks, there's no reason why we can't think of setting aside about half of our acreage for perpetuity, whether it's in farmland or parks or forests. There are all sorts of agreements that can be made, public and private, to do that. We have a few things that we're working on right now. Some people with some land want the state to have it, or want conservation easements put on it. That's something that we really have to work on. Probably the main thing is education. We've got to do more. We've got to be sure that our young people are the best and brightest. I believe in history and by nature, I think we're at the top of the stack. But I tell you something, the other day, we have had a group that Danny Elsie of Workforce and Development put together a couple of years ago, where we get very bright high school students who are chosen by their teachers, I believe, to come be in a program where they study for a few days the state government. And they come to this building, to come to my office, go to different agencies, and really get a good view of how the government works. And that sort of understanding helps people learn. Well, Walter Edgar's history book is the single greatest source of such South Carolina information of any I know of. So for a few years, I've been giving them away to people for various reasons, and do a little autograph or something on there, a little note. Well, I had, I think it's 12 of those very thick, nice books, and I wrote out something for each one on there. Used a good pen and very careful with my handwriting, so I wanted to be sure it looked presentable, and gave them to them, and they were happy. They were flipping through. We had the ceremony there in my office, and they were delighted to get it, and they were just beaming. Well, I found out after it was over, they walked out in the hall, many of them could not read the inscription because it was cursive. Now that strikes me as a problem. Because you wonder, now you have to know the digital world, of course, but the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, a lot of old letters and things, and just people generally communicating, they write in cursive. That was an indication to me that we got to do some more thinking in a lot of areas.
Governor, on the issue of the homestead exemption that you've brought as good policy, I'm curious, there was some criticism by lawmakers this year over it, given that the initial cost was much higher, but given the money that the state wanted spending, but also that South Carolina is growing and it is skewing older. There were a lot of lawmakers who wanted to see tax breaks for perhaps young professionals. It's difficult to get a home in kind of for younger demographics. Do you think it's good policy to be giving tax breaks to older South Carolinians and almost motivating more older folks to move to South Carolina?
Well, I think we're growing on our own without newcomers coming in, although we do have a lot of newcomers coming. But as far as tax breaks go, you can't give a tax break about everything. But there's some things that are more equal than others, as they say. But these seniors, most are seniors, and have been in their homes for a long time. They've paid a lot of taxes. They've done the work. A lot of them have come up the hard way. A lot of them didn't have any help, but they made it. They were disciplined, they worked, and I think that's one that is worth giving. It went from $50,000 to $75,000, $25,000. I think we can afford that. Now, whether we can give everybody who can't afford a house their first house, I don't know if that's the right answer. I think a better answer would be scholarships.
As Joe mentioned, this is your final budget, but obviously agencies will start turning in their budget requests later this year. Is there anything that you'll be pushing the next governor to insert in their executive budget? Anything in particular?
Just what I just said. Those things: power, education, and protecting our historic, natural, and cultural places. Just general.
Any regrets that you wish had been put into the budgets over the years that you've been governor?
Well, you always think you could have done something better, of course, or something a little different. But I've been satisfied with the work with the people and with the legislature. We haven't had fights like they do in some places. That's because I've known a lot of them for a number of years. But if you communicate, collaborate, and cooperate, it's almost becoming trite because I say it all the time. But it works like a charm. People don't like surprises. People like to have their voices heard, and sometimes I've been dead wrong when the other folks were dead right. But you have to listen. You have to get along with people. Fighting doesn't do any good, and that makes headlines and might get you some votes, or might lose you some, but that's not the reason you ought to be fighting.
All right, thanks, y'all.
Thank you very much.
Wrapping up that press conference there, you just heard from Governor Henry McMaster talking about the state budget, and one of the big things was a major veto involving the earmarks involving Scout Motors. We'll get to that in just a second, but first to go over some numbers that he mentioned earlier on in the press conference, starting off by talking about how important Ready SC is. If you don't know what Ready SC is, it's an organization and it's a group that trains people in manufacturing jobs, all at no cost. Also saying that their state budget was $43.9 billion. That is in state and federal. Breaking it down a little bit more in the numbers, saying a third from Medicaid, a third designed to certain places like sales tax, income tax. That's about $14 billion as well. He also said that the national debt right now for every American is about $140,000. And he says here in South Carolina, we have a balanced budget, but we have surplus to help. He also mentioned that the General Assembly adopted 92% of the proposals that Governor McMaster did for this state budget. He also mentioned when it comes to people who are having jobs, he said 83% of those 25 to 54 years old are employed or seeking employment. He says that is the highest number in the Southeast. He also mentioned about the tax rate. Starting in 2017, it was about 7%. Now here it's about 5.21%. Also going into the state budget, he did mention that he's going to be increasing the homestead from $50,000 to $75,000. The teacher's salary, as we've been talking about, going from about $30,000 to now about $50,500. And he also mentioned the need for SROs, how we've been adding them over the years, going from starting it only about 406 SROs. We now have about 1,181 SROs across our state. However, that is still about 100 SROs short of having one in every single school. He is saying that they are looking to find officers as well. He also mentioned that they are expanding kindergarten private providers to make room for students, and the Education Scholarship Trust Fund he mentioned, and the Meeting Street Scholarship providing that private donors, saying that the state put $18.7 million into that for students to be helping with that Education Scholarship Trust Fund. He also said he wants to be and going to continue to put in money into conservation, saying that already here in South Carolina, just in the PD alone, they have protected 62,000 acres, but in total, more than 400,000 acres was protected last year. They're saying they want to have more money for those mitigation projects. He also mentioned about roads and road projects, starting off $2.7 billion for roads when he started with this state budget. Now there's about $7 billion in active road projects across South Carolina. He also mentioned the fixed officer retirement, saying up to $80,000, keeping these officers in and around, helping our community for as long as they can. And then really ending with that need about nuclear and nuclear renaissance here in the United States, and also mentioning the VC Summer nuclear plant that he's been looking at. Here's the big thing that came out of it, the earmarks. That is what he vetoed. The big thing that he vetoed was over with Scout Motors. Now, if you remember, the Scout Motors project was over budget by about $150 million. The governor says, quote, that needs to be paid because it needs to be done. He says the money needs to get there. Before the money is paid, the legislature audit did inquire about the shortfall. Legislation would then vote on whether to pay those bills. But the governor said, we have a contract, quote, we need to keep it. So he said no Scout problems, vetoed that proviso, saying that it's bad business policy and says it hurts our policy as a state. He also then continued to say that the money needs to be paid. We can still go back and explain how it happened, why it happened. You'll remember that 5-month delay involving the conservation efforts. But they said, and the governor really ended with, we are contracted to do this and we need to pay it. So that was the biggest veto, especially here in the Midlands. We know with Scout Motors, and especially in that Blythewood area, that it's continuing to grow in this area. But that was one of the vetoes that we got here from Governor McMaster that is specifically impacting us here in the Midlands. We are going to have a full recap of this coming up later on Friends at 5, and we're going to have more about this on our website, WLTX.com, in just a little bit. But we appreciate you tuning in today right here on WLTX Plus for Governor Henry McMaster's press conference on those vetoes and just about the state budget in general. Again, don't forget you can always follow us on air and online at WLTX.com. We thank you so much for joining us here for this breaking news conference, and we'll see you at 5.
WLTX breaking news now.